Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you know what Henry Winkler, Steven Spielberg, Cher, Tom Cruise, Magic Johnson, Muhammad Ali, and me, Drew Holland, all have in common? We're dyslexic. I'm here to talk with you about my experience as a dyslexic student in grade school, high school, and college. For those of you that don't know, dyslexia is a learning disorder that makes it difficult for students to learn to read, write, and pronounce new words. The Google definition for dyslexia is a general term for disorders that involve difficulty in learning to read or interpret words, letters, and other symbols, but do not affect general intelligence. My earliest memory of school was when I was in kindergarten. My teacher gave the class a worksheet that had about 5 different colored cubes on it. Next to each cube was a line. The intention of the assignment was for the children to write the color of each cube on the line that corresponded with it. I remember looking at the colored cubes and not knowing where to start. All my friends were turning in their worksheets and going to music class, which was my favorite class, and I was still working on this worksheet. One of the little girls in my class felt bad for me, so she told me how to spell some of the words. I couldn't figure out the rest, so I just wrote down random letters and turned in my paper. This was typical. Whenever I got an assignment, I would spend more time on it than all my classmates, and I would usually get an F. When I brought homework home, my parents would spend hours with me at the kitchen table working on it. My parents couldn't figure out why I was struggling in school, so around first grade, they took me to Children's Hospital for some tests. Children's Hospital said that I was dyslexic, and I needed an education plan in order to succeed in school. From now on, I went to the resource teacher's classroom for an hour a day to work on my reading and math skills. I also went to tutoring after school for 1 hour, 3 days a week. From 1st to 4th grade, I spent about 3 hours every night on homework, with lots of help from my dad. Once 5th grade rolled around, I was in serious trouble. I had a teacher that did not understand my learning disability. She constantly yelled at me and humiliated me in front of my entire class. She often assigned me word searches and would yell at me for working too long on them. Word searches do not help dyslexic students. Children with dyslexia often see letters on the page move, and this was a big problem for me. I would try to focus on these word searches, and I would see all the letters moving. We would get a word search once a week, so I would miss recess the day I got the word search in order to finish it. The straw that broke the camel's back was when I was taking an English test. All of my classmates had turned in their test, and I was the only student who had not yet turned in a test. My teacher walked up to me and took my test out of my hands. She said to the class, "The only reason Drew did not finish his test is because he does not take his learning seriously." I remember trying so hard not to cry in front of my entire class. I became very depressed, and I started telling my parents that I shouldn't go to school anymore because I was too stupid. My parents realized that I needed a really good support system and that the school I was currently attending wasn't going to help me. In the middle of September during my 5th grade year, I switched schools and started attending a school that specialized for kids with learning disabilities. The types of disabilities most of my classmates had were ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, and auditory disabilities. The school gave me the confidence that I was lacking. The most significant thing that this school did for the students was that they sat us down and they told us that we had learning disabilities. Our teachers told us that they were going to teach us the strategies we needed to succeed in a normal classroom setting, but that we would have to work harder than most of our classmates. For instance, my 7th grade teacher made us watch the movie Rudy, and she told us that when we went to college, that the reality was that we were going to have to work hard and advocate for ourselves. The reason I'm telling you this is because a lot of special ed students and students with IEPs don't know that they have learning disabilities. They don't understand why they need more help outside the classroom, or why they'll need extended time on the test. If these children don't know why they're different from all their friends, they're just going to feel stupid. They will have a bad attitude towards school because they'll think, "I'm just stupid, why should I try?" Many times these students get punished by their parents or humiliated in the classroom by teachers that misinterpret their disability with a behavioral problem. These students will develop a nasty chip on their shoulder, and they won't want to even try to overachieve in the classroom. When it was time for me to go to high school, The school my parents sent me to said that I did not have to take the 8th grade placement exam because I attended a school for children with learning differences. I was just a kid, so I was happy not to have to take another test. It wasn't until much later that I realized that my high school was putting me in low classes because they did not want to give me the accommodations I required to succeed in a classroom setting. I was a junior in high school the first time I realized that I was not getting a good education. I was part of the drama club at my school, and it was the final week of practice before our show. My friends were panicking because they did not have enough time to do their homework because of all the time play practice was taking. I was confused because I had barely had any homework. They showed me what they were doing in their classes, and I was shocked. They were light years ahead of me. For example, in English class, they were reading books like Othello and writing papers about symbolism and other themes within the book. My English class was just reading books and taking multiple choice quizzes over the plot. Plus, it was January, and my class had only read 2 books and not written 1 paper. In other classes, like history, my friends had essay tests. All my tests were just multiple choice. I knew that I wanted to go to college, but I was worried that I was not going to be at the college level when it was time to graduate. When I took these lower classes, I rarely had to study. I had A's and B's, but I didn't really work hard for those A's and B's. I told the resource teacher at my school that I wanted to switch to honors level English because I wanted to develop strong writing skills to take with me to college. She was not supportive. She told me that I was setting myself up for failure and that she wouldn't allow me to take it. Little did she know I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I talked to the English teacher, and she said that she knew I could take her honors class because I worked hard. I took that honors English class the rest of my junior year, and I ended up getting a B. I was not surprised when my resource teacher told me not to take the honors English class. She didn't understand my learning disability. She would say things to me like, "Drew, you're not smart, but you're a hard worker." She actually thought this was a compliment. She always suggested that I go to trade school instead of college because I was such a hard worker. I felt like she was saying that stupid people go to trade school. I never looked down on trade school. My father has a friend that has a commercial plumbing company, and he's a very wealthy and smart man. I just knew that I wasn't interested in going to trade school. One day she asked me if I wanted to go on a field trip to a local college. I knew that I had no interest in going to this local college, but I thought I would just keep an open mind. We were getting on the bus for the field trip, and I started looking around at everyone that was going. There was about 17 of us. I realized that everyone going on the field trip had a learning disability. We got to the college, and my resource teacher started saying things like, "This school would be a good fit for you guys because the classes are easier here." She said we'd have less homework, and the professors would move at a slower pace. I felt so embarrassed. I realized that all of my friends at school that did not have learning disabilities probably thought that I was stupid because I went on this field trip. I started to wonder if maybe I was mentally disabled and I was oblivious to it. My parents raised me not to be ashamed of my dyslexia, and they always told me I was smart, and they encouraged me. After this experience, I felt so ashamed of myself. I felt worthless and stupid. Taking that honors English class gave me a clear understanding of how I learned. I knew that a majority of the students in that class didn't really study. They looked over their materials briefly, and that was about it. The rest of it seemed to come naturally. In my lower level English class, I didn't need to study hard either. I just looked over the materials. This is when I realized that I was capable of taking higher classes if I spent time preparing. Kids with learning differences are capable of learning the same concepts taught in high classes, but they need to understand the best way they learn. I believe the most important accommodation that all students with learning differences must have is copies of the teacher's notes. With dyslexia, it's very difficult to look at the board and copy the notes. All the letters move, and oftentimes the students write down the wrong idea that the teacher is trying to convey. If the instructor decides to read the notes out loud, dyslexic students can't spell fast enough, so they misspell all the words, and when they look back and read their notes, they don't know what they're reading. I know for a fact in high school I could have taken the higher history class if I had copies of the teacher's notes. Now that I'm in college, I give the professors paperwork that says I'm dyslexic, and they're forced by law to supply me with copies of their notes. If I can get copies of the notes in college, what's the harm of me getting copies of the notes in high school? Dyslexic students can get good grades on essay tests. Normal students just look over their notes and then they are ready to take the essay test. When I study for an essay test, I make a list of all the possible questions that could be asked on that subject. I then write a practice essay on each question, plus I rewrite each practice essay 10 times. I start studying a week in advance, unlike most students that just study the night before. Math is my weakest subject. In high school, I was always put in the lowest math classes, and now that I'm in college, I'm paying for it. I got to pre-calculus my senior year of high school because I went against the special ed teacher and took it anyway. She did not want me to take it because she didn't know how to teach it if I had questions. Unfortunately, I had a mean-spirited pre-cal teacher, which made it harder for me to learn. I turned in my homework every day, and I even got to school an hour early to ask him questions. He would yell at me and get angry. He kept trying to put me in the lower math class, but I refused. I passed the pre-cal class with a B. On one occasion, he took my book and threw it across the room and the front cover ripped off. I now attend Northern Kentucky University, and I'm a construction management major. Construction management is a 4-year degree. I have had to take algebra and pre-calculus again because my math ACT score was 1 point below what it was supposed to be. In order to pass both classes, I've had to see a tutor 2 to 3 times a week for 2-hour sessions each time. I'm very grateful for the support of my parents. They have allowed me to quit work so I can study for math. Math is not the only thing I wasn't ready for in college. I took honors English in high school only junior and senior year. This is a big deal because the honors kids learned how to write a research paper sophomore year of high school. The lower classes at the school that I went to never learned how to write a research paper. I was expected to write a research paper in college, and I had no clue where to start. My best friend from high school that took the higher classes helped me write my paper. If it were not for the help of my friend, I don't know if I would have passed that class. I hate to say it, but I've had college professors that have treated me badly because of my dyslexia. One professor refused to give me extended time on my test, even though I gave him the paperwork that said by law he had to give me extended time. I went to disability services, and they did not do anything to help me. I had to get my dad, who's a lawyer, involved to get my extended time. We had a meeting with the professor and the Disability Services Administration. The professor was very rude to me at the meeting. He said that he would give me extended time because he saw potential in me. He told me that I reminded him of his mentally retarded, bedridden daughter. My dad was furious and wanted to tell the professor off. I told him it wasn't worth it and I laughed it off. The worst part was that the administration at Disability Services didn't even stick up for me when my professor made this remark. Instead, they said, "See, your professor understands. Someone very close to his heart has a disability too." Although I have had some terrible experiences with college professors, I've had some really good ones too. My business professor actually read the paperwork I gave him, and he sent me all of my assignments a week in advance so I could prepare for them. The good news is that I'm going to be a junior in college next fall, and I haven't failed one class. Last semester on my report card, I got 1 A, 3 Bs, and a C. Every semester I take 15 credit hours, and I've never gotten a grade lower than a C in college, and that's because I've suffered and worked hard every semester. Have you ever seen the cartoon by Micah Russell called Now Climb That Tree? The cartoon depicts a monkey, penguin, elephant, fish, fox, and seal all standing in a row. There is a teacher behind a desk that says to them, "For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree." I've heard this quote many times, but I feel like the school system has misinterpreted it. The school system thinks that not all students are at the same level, so we should put some students in lower classes. The fact of the matter is that some students have learning disabilities. And I don't think that this is interpreting the quote correctly. The reality is that some children have no learning differences, and they excel in school. Others have dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, and auditory disorders that make it harder for them to excel in school. We are all different animals. Some of us are monkeys that can easily climb the tree, and others are fish, and it may seem impossible for a fish to climb a tree. Instead of letting the fish swim in water because we're all different animals, we need to make the fish go on land and climb the tree. The fish deserves to go to college just like the monkey. Not all fish are as fortunate as I to have had parents that pay for 4 to 6 hours of tutoring every week. I'm not saying that all students need to perform at the AP level, but I'm saying that they need to be given the opportunity to take true college preparatory classes. All children need to learn how to write essays and research papers in high school so they can transition to college. It's not fair for the school system to decide if someone's going to go to college. I'm very blessed to have had the greatest parents in the world. My mom and dad have been fighting for my education since I was 7 years old, and now I'm 20, and they're still fighting for me. I am one of the very lucky few fish that will be a college graduate because I had the right support system and countless hours of tutoring. In conclusion, I hope by sharing my story, it will inspire you to help other kids out there like me. You never know when you're going to have the next Henry Winkler, Steven Spielberg, Cher, Tom Cruise, Magic Johnson, Muhammad Ali, and Drew Holland. Thank you.